The body lay twisted in the alley, pale skin luminous under the streetlights. Detective Marcus Webb crouched beside it, his latex gloves catching the blue and red flash of patrol car lights. Another one. The fifth in 3 months. Same M.O., his partner Detective Elena Torres said from behind him, her voice tight. Strangulation. Staged position. No sign of struggle. Marcus studied the victim's face. A young man, maybe 25, her eyes still open in permanent shock. He felt the familiar weight settle in his chest. That crushing responsibility to catch whoever was doing this. He's getting bolder. This is practically a main street. Elena knelt beside him, her dark eyes scanning the scene with the same intensity he'd admired since she transferred to homicide 6 months ago. Or more desperate. Killers like this, they escalate. They need it more frequently. Yeah. Marcus stood, his knees cracking. He was getting too old for this. 42 and feeling every year of it. Let's canvass the area. Someone must have seen something. As they walked the perimeter, Marcus made mental notes. The positioning of the body, the ligature marks on the neck, the way her hands were folded across her chest, almost peaceful, almost reverent. He knew this killer's signature better than anyone. He'd studied every detail of every scene until they burned behind his eyelids when he tried to sleep. Because he had to. Because catching this monster was all that mattered. 3 days later, Marcus sat in the precinct's conference room, photographs of all 5 victims pinned to the board behind him. Captain Rodriguez stood at the head of the table, his face grim. The press is calling him the mercy killer, Rodriguez said, because of how he poses them like they're just sleeping. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. There's no mercy in murder. Agreed. Which is why I'm putting every available resource on this. Webb Torres, your lead. I want daily updates. After the meeting, Elena lingered as the others filed out. You okay? She asked. You've been putting in a lot of hours on this. I'm fine. Marcus, she moved closer, her voice dropping. I've been tracking your overtime. You're here 18, 20 hours some days. When do you sleep? When we catch him. He started gathering the files, avoiding her gaze. Elena was too perceptive sometimes, too observant. I'm worried about you. This case, it's consuming you. Someone has to stop him. She was quiet for a moment, then touched his arm. We'll get him, together. But you have to take care of yourself too. Marcus nodded, managed something like a smile. I know. Thanks, Elena. After she left, he stood alone in the conference room, staring at the faces of the women on the board. Each one a perfect victim. Each one chosen carefully. Each one, he caught himself, shook his head. He needed to stay focused. The break in the case came 2 weeks later. A witness had come forward. Someone who'd seen a man leaving the area around the time of the 4th murder. The description was vague, but it was something. Medium height, dark jacket, baseball cap. Elena read from her notes as they drove to interview the witness. Not much to go on. It's more than we had yesterday. Marcus kept his eyes on the road, his hands steady on the wheel. The witness, an elderly man who ran a corner store, was nervous, but certain. I remember because he looked right at me, he said. Just for a second. Had these intense eyes. Made me uncomfortable, you know. Marcus took notes while Elena showed him photo arrays. The old man studied each face carefully, then shook his head. None of these. Sorry. In the car afterward, Elena was quiet. Too quiet. What is it? Marcus asked. The timeline, she said slowly. For the 4th victim. I've been going back through everything. The coroner puts time of death between 10 and 11 p.m. Right. Where were you that night? Marcus felt his pulse quicken, but his voice stayed level. What kind of question is that? Just trying to eliminate possibilities. You know how this works. Everyone gets cleared. I was home, alone, like most nights. Elena nodded, made a note in her phone. Okay. But something had shifted. Marcus could feel it in the air between them, a new tension that hadn't been there before. Over the next week, Elena's questions became more frequent, more pointed. She asked about his whereabouts for each murder, cross-referenced his reports with security footage from the precinct, started showing up at his desk unannounced, as if checking to see if he was actually there. Marcus realized, with a cold clarity, that she suspected him, his partner, his friend, the person he trusted most in the world. She was hunting him. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he felt a strange sort of pride. Elena was good, better than he'd given her credit for. She'd noticed what no one else had. The small inconsistencies, the gaps in his alibis, the way he always seemed to know just a little too much about each crime scene. He'd been so careful, but she'd been more careful. Now they worked in a strange dance, both pretending everything was normal, both waiting for the other to make a move. It ended on a rainy Thursday night. Elena called him, her voice urgent. I found him. The witness from the corner store. He saw the guy again. Got a partial plate this time. I tracked the vehicle. Marcus, I know where he is. Where? The old Riverside warehouse district. I'm heading there now. Wait for me. Don't go alone. Just hurry. Marcus drove through the rain, his windshield wipers beating a steady rhythm. His service weapon sat heavy on his hip. He knew, with absolute certainty, that this wasn't about catching the killer. This was about the killer being caught. The warehouse was dark, abandoned. Marcus pulled his weapon as he entered, his footsteps echoing on concrete. Elena, here. Her voice came from the back of the space. He found her in what used to be an office, a single lamp illuminating the empty room. She stood with her back to a desk, her gun already drawn, pointed at the floor. Where is he? Marcus asked. There is no witness sighting, Elena said quietly. There's no vehicle. There's just us. Marcus went still. I know it's you, Marcus. The words hung in the air between them. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The fourth victim, Elena continued. You claimed you were doing paperwork that night, but I checked the security logs. You left the precinct at 9:47 p.m. The murder happened at 10:30. The crime scene was 12 minutes from the station. Coincidence? The third victim worked at a coffee shop you frequent. The second victim jogged past your apartment every morning. I have your credit card statements. You were near every crime scene within 24 hours of each murder. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. The careful mask he'd worn for so long, splitting down the middle. But the real evidence, Elena said, her voice breaking slightly, was your reaction to the crime scenes. You weren't horrified, Marcus. You were proud. I saw it in your eyes, the way you studied your own work, the way you couldn't help but admire the staging. You can't prove any of this. I have your gloves. The ones you were wearing at the first crime scene, before we even knew there was a serial killer. You wore gloves to a scene where we weren't treating it as a homicide yet. Why would you do that unless you knew your DNA was already there? Marcus laughed, a hollow sound. You're good, Eleanor. I underestimated you. Why? The word came out as a plea. Why did you do it? Because someone had to. Marcus raised his weapon slowly, pointing it at her. She raised hers in response, both of them locked in a standoff. This world is full of suffering. I gave them peace. I made them beautiful in death. I showed them mercy. There's no mercy in murder. That's what I said, wasn't it? He smiled, and it was the saddest thing Eleanor had ever seen. I really believed it too, for a while. Put the gun down, Marcus. Please, we can what? You're going to arrest me? Your partner? Your friend? His finger tightened on the trigger. You know how this ends, Elena. You knew before you came here. I hoped I was wrong. But you weren't. They stood in the dim light, Two people who'd worked side by side for months, who'd shared coffee and late nights and the weight of this city's darkness. Now they faced each other across an unbridgeable divide, weapons raised, each knowing that only one of them would walk out of this warehouse. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. "I'm sorry it had to be you." "Me too." The warehouse fell silent. Rain drummed on the metal roof above. Two fingers tightened on two triggers. And then one shot, one echo, one ending. Who fired first? Who fell? The rain doesn't answer. The darkness keeps its secrets. And somewhere in the city, the sirens begin to wail.
Detective Rachel Morgan had seen her share of open and shut cases, but this wasn't one of them. The body of Thomas Brennan lay slumped over his mahogany desk, a single gunshot wound to the chest. The study was immaculate except for the spray of blood across the leather chair and the shattered window behind him. Time of death, 8:47 p.m., according to the coroner's preliminary assessment. "Security system was disabled," Officer Chen said, handing Rachel the report. "Cameras were down for exactly 12 minutes. Professional job." Rachel studied the room. Everything pointed to one person, Daniel Brennan, Thomas's business partner and half-brother. They'd been locked in a bitter dispute over the company for months. Daniel stood to inherit everything with Thomas gone. There was just one problem. "I was at Marcello's," Daniel said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. He sat across from Rachel in the interrogation room, his expensive suit immaculate, his hands folded calmly on the table. "I have witnesses. I have footage. I was nowhere near Thomas's house." Rachel slid the printed photos across the table. "Your brother threatened to buy out your shares. You'd lose everything." "I loved my brother." Daniel's voice cracked. "We were arguing about business, yes, but I would never—" "Where were you at 8:47 p.m.? "Marcello's restaurant, I already told you. I was there from 8:30 until almost 10. Ask anyone." Rachel leaned back. She wanted to believe he was lying. Every instinct told her Daniel was guilty, but the evidence told a different story. The security footage was damning, for Rachel's theory. She sat in the precinct's media room, watching the restaurant's cameras for the third time. There was Daniel, clear as day, sitting at a corner table. The timestamp read 8:47 p.m., the exact moment his brother was shot 12 miles across the city. Multiple camera angles, Daniel ordering wine, Daniel checking his phone, Daniel laughing at something the waiter said. The waiter confirmed it. The credit card receipt confirmed it. 6 other diners recognized him from the news and confirmed it. Daniel Brennan had a perfect alibi. Rachel rubbed her tired eyes and started the footage again. There had to be something, some detail she was missing. She watched Daniel lift his wine glass, check his phone, gesture to the waiter. "Wait." Rachel sat forward, her pulse quickening. She rewound the footage to the moment Daniel checked his phone. His watch, a distinctive Rolex on his left wrist. She pulled up the interview footage from earlier that day, scrolled to a clear shot of Daniel's hands on the interrogation table, the same Rolex, on his right wrist. Rachel's breath caught. She rewound both videos, watching carefully. In the restaurant, left wrist. In the interview, right wrist. People didn't just switch which hand they wore their watch on. Unless... Rachel's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Daniel's background check. Birthplace, St. Catherine's Hospital, Seattle. She dug deeper, accessing sealed adoption records with a warrant she'd have to justify later. And there it was. Twin boys, born 3 minutes apart, separated at birth. One kept by the mother, one adopted out to a different family. Daniel Brennan had an identical twin brother. She found him in 2 hours. Ethan Cross. Different last name, different city, different life. A contractor in Portland, 200 miles away. But the DMV photo was unmistakable. The same face, the same build, the same dark eyes. The same face that had sat across from her in the interrogation room, wearing a watch on the wrong wrist. Rachel made 2 calls, one to Portland PD, one to bring Daniel Brennan back in. When she walked into the interrogation room this time, she wasn't alone. Behind the two-way mirror, Ethan Cross stood in handcuffs, escorted by 2 officers from Portland. Daniel, or whoever this was, looked up calmly. "Detective Morgan, I wasn't expecting to see you again so soon." "You made a mistake," Rachel said quietly, sitting down across from him. "I don't know what you mean." "The watch." She placed 2 printed photos on the table. "In the restaurant footage, you're wearing your Rolex on your left wrist. When I interviewed you yesterday, it was on your right wrist." The man's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "You're right-handed, aren't you, Ethan?" Rachel continued. "Your brother Daniel is left-handed. That's why he wears his watch on the right wrist. It's more comfortable for a lefty, but you're used to wearing yours on the left." The silence stretched between them. "When did you two find each other?" Rachel asked. "When did you discover you had an identical twin?" Ethan Cross, because that's who this was, sitting in Daniel's expensive suit playing the grieving brother, finally spoke. 3 years ago, DNA ancestry test. We both took one. And you decided to use it." Daniel had everything. Ethan's voice was flat, emotionless. Same genes, same start in life. But he got the rich family, the inheritance, the company. I got foster homes and food stamps. When Thomas threatened to take even that away from him, we knew what we had to do. So you created the perfect alibi. Daniel kills Thomas while you sit in a restaurant being seen by dozens of witnesses. It would have worked. It didn't. Rachel stood, gathering the photos. "Where's Daniel now?" "You'll never find him. He's gone. New identity, new life. Already out of the country by now. We found you in 2 hours." Rachel moved to the door. "We'll find him too." As she left the interrogation room, she paused at the two-way mirror. On the other side, the real Daniel Brennan stood watching his brother through the glass, his face pale, his left hand, his watch-wearing hand, trembling. They'd picked him up at the Canadian border 3 hours ago, passport in hand, ready to vanish. Both brothers would spend the rest of their lives in prison. The perfect alibi, undone by a single detail neither of them had thought to rehearse. Rachel walked back to her desk, the case file already closed in her mind. Sometimes the smallest details were the ones that mattered most. Sometimes a watch was all it took to unravel a perfect crime. In the interrogation room, Ethan Cross sat alone in the silence. On the other side of the glass, Daniel Brennan stared at his reflection, at his brother's reflection, at the mirror image that had seemed like such a perfect plan. Neither spoke, neither needed to. They'd been 3 minutes apart at birth. They'd spend the rest of their lives in separate cells, knowing those 3 minutes had made all the difference.
Detective Sophia Bennett had stopped reading letters from death row inmates years ago. They all claimed innocence. They all had theories. They all wanted one more chance, one more appeal, one more miracle with 7 days left to live. But this one was different. Not because of what it said. Marcus Hayes' letter was no more compelling than the others. He claimed he'd been framed for the murder of convenience store clerk David Lawson 10 years ago. He swore he was innocent. He begged her to look at the case again. What made it different was the date. Marcus Hayes had 7 days until his execution, and Sophia had been the detective who'd helped put him there. She set the letter down on her desk and stared at it for a long moment. "Something wrong?" her partner, Detective James Richter, asked from across their shared workspace. He'd been her partner for 3 years now, reliable and steady. Before that, he'd been a rookie when the Hayes case went down. "Just another death row appeal," Sophia said, sliding the letter into her desk drawer. "Marcus Hayes. Remember that case?" James's expression barely flickered. "Convenience store murder. Yeah, I remember. That was my first major case. Why?" "Executions in 7 days. He's still claiming innocence." "They all do." James went back to his paperwork. "Don't let it get to you, Soph. We did our job. The evidence was solid." Sophia nodded, but something gnawed at her. That night, she pulled the case file from the archives. David Lawson, 28 years old, shot twice in the chest during a robbery at the Quick Stop where he worked night shifts. The register had been emptied, $300 missing. Security cameras had been disabled. Marcus Hayes, career criminal with a record of petty theft and assault. His fingerprints were on the front door. A witness, a customer who'd left just before the murder, identified Marcus as someone he'd seen loitering outside. Open and shut. Except. Sophia spread the crime scene photos across her dining room table at midnight, a glass of wine forgotten beside her. She'd worked hundreds of cases in 15 years. She knew what a real robbery looked like. This wasn't one. The register drawer was open, but the bills were removed too neatly. No mess, no panic. The security camera had been disabled. But from the inside, someone who knew where the DVR was kept in the back office. And Marcus Hayes' fingerprints were only on the front door, nowhere else in the store. She pulled the interrogation transcripts. Marcus had admitted to being at the store earlier that day. He'd bought cigarettes. That explained the fingerprints, but he'd sworn he was home with his girlfriend during the murder. His girlfriend had recanted her alibi testimony later, claiming Marcus had threatened her. The jury believed it. Marcus was convicted. Sophia read the girlfriend's testimony again, then read the detective's notes from her interview. The interviewing detective had been James Richter. "I need to talk to you about the Hayes case," Sophia said the next morning, sliding a coffee across James's desk. He looked up from his computer. "Still thinking about that?" "Soph, let it go. The guy's guilty." His girlfriend recanted her alibi. "You were the one who interviewed her." "Yeah, and she admitted he'd threatened her into lying initially." "Pretty standard." "Can I see your notes from that interview?" Something flickered across James's face. "They'd be in the case file. You have it?" "The original notes, your personal notebook." "Why?" "Just being thorough." James studied her for a moment. "I don't keep notebooks from 10 years ago, Sophia." "What's this really about?" "I want to make sure we got the right guy." "We did." His voice was firm. "Don't do this to yourself. Don't second-guess a solid conviction because some death row inmate wrote you a letter." But Sophia was already walking away, pulling out her phone to call Marcus Hayes' former girlfriend. Jennifer Torres met her at a coffee shop in a strip mall 40 miles outside the city. She was nervous, fidgeting with her cup, eyes darting to the door every few minutes. "I knew someone would come eventually," Jennifer said quietly. "I've been waiting for 10 years." "Tell me about the alibi," Sophia said. "Marcus was with me that night. All night. We watched movies, ordered pizza, never left my apartment. I told that to the detective, the young one, Richter. But he said I was lying to protect Marcus." "He said Marcus threatened you." Jennifer's hands trembled. "No. Detective Richter threatened me. He said if I didn't change my story, I'd be charged as an accessory. Said they'd take my daughter away. She was 3 years old." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "So I lied. I said Marcus threatened me. I said I was scared of him. And they put him on death row." Sophia's blood ran cold. "Why didn't you come forward?" "I tried. I called the prosecutor's office twice. They said I was just trying to help my boyfriend, that my testimony had already been discredited. No one would listen." Sophia pulled out her phone, set it on the table between them, and pressed record. "Tell me everything again, from the beginning." She went back to the evidence. The fingerprints on the door, explained by Marcus's earlier visit. The witness who saw him loitering, she tracked him down, and he admitted he'd only seen someone vaguely matching Marcus's description. The detective had shown him Marcus's photo and suggested it was the same person. That detective had been James Richter, the girlfriend's forced testimony, the convenient evidence, the perfectly clean crime scene that didn't match a panicked robbery. Sophia pulled David Lawson's background, went through his social media, his phone records, his banking statements, and found it. David Lawson and James Richter had been friends, close friends. They'd gone to high school together, stayed in touch, and 3 months before the murder, David had started depositing large amounts of cash. $2,000 here, $1,500 there. Then the deposits stopped. 1 week before his death, blackmail. Sophia's hands shook as she cross-referenced the dates with James's personal records. Records she shouldn't have access to, but pulled anyway using her credentials. The affair had lasted 6 months. A married detective sleeping with a bartender downtown? David Lawson must have found out. Maybe James had confided in his old friend. Maybe David had seen something. Either way, David had started blackmailing him. And James had killed him to make it stop. Then framed Marcus Hayes because he'd been at the store earlier that day, because he had a record, because he was an easy target. Sophia sat in her car outside the precinct, her heart pounding. She had Jennifer's testimony on her phone. She had the financial records. She had the timeline. She had enough to free Marcus Hayes, but she needed James's confession. I figured it out, Sophia said, walking into the precinct's parking garage where James was getting into his car. He froze, his hand on the door handle. Figured what out? David Lawson was blackmailing you, the affair. He was your friend, and he was bleeding you dry. She stepped closer, her phone in her pocket, already recording. So, you killed him. Made it look like a robbery. And when you needed someone to pin it on, Marcus Hayes walked right into your hands. James's face went pale, then hard. You don't know what you're talking about. You pressured Jennifer Torres into changing her statement. You led the witness to identify Marcus. You made sure the evidence pointed exactly where you needed it to. Sophia, an innocent man is going to die in 4 days because of you. James's jaw clenched. David wouldn't stop. He wanted more and more money. He was going to tell my wife, ruin my career. He gave me no choice. There's always a choice. Not when you have everything to lose. James pulled his gun, pointing it at her chest. I'm sorry, Soph, I really am. You were a good partner. The recording's already uploading to the cloud, Sophia said quietly, her hand still in her pocket. Captain Rodriguez is getting a notification right now. Even if you kill me, they'll know. James's hand trembled. For a moment, she thought he might lower the gun. Then he fired. The bullet caught Sophia in the shoulder, spinning her back against a concrete pillar. She dropped to the ground, gasping, blood spreading across her shirt. James ran, got in his car. Tires squealed as he peeled out of the parking garage, disappearing into traffic before backup arrived. Sophia lay on the cold concrete, hand pressed to her shoulder, her phone clutched in her other hand. She could hear shouting, footsteps running toward her. Officer down, someone yelled. Get a medic. She managed to look at her phone screen through blurring vision. The recording had uploaded. All of it. James's confession, Jennifer's testimony, the evidence. Marcus Hayes would live. James Richter was gone. As the paramedics lifted her onto a stretcher, Sophia closed her eyes. The job wasn't done. James was out there somewhere, running, hiding. But Marcus Hayes would walk out of prison. An innocent man would get his life back. It wasn't enough, but it was something. In 4 days, Marcus Hayes' execution would be stayed. In 6 days, his conviction would be overturned. And somewhere out there, James Richter would be looking over his shoulder for the rest of his life, knowing the truth was out, knowing he could never come home. Sophia drifted into unconsciousness as the ambulance doors closed, the siren wailing into the night. Justice, she thought, wasn't always clean, but sometimes it was enough. 3 months later, Marcus Hayes walked out of prison a free man. Detective Sophia Bennett watched from her car, her shoulder still aching, her service weapon turned in, her badge sitting heavy on the passenger seat. James Richter's face stared back at her from a wanted poster on her dashboard. She started the engine. The hunt wasn't over, it was just beginning.